Across cultures and through the ages, we have grappled with a profound question: what happens after we die? For many, this question leads to another, even more unsettling one. It is the idea of an eternal hell, a place of unending punishment. This concept has troubled thinkers, believers, and skeptics alike. How can a finite life, with its limited number of mistakes, lead to an infinite eternity of suffering? The very idea seems to strike a dissonant chord within our fundamental sense of fairness. It forces us to confront the nature of justice, the character of God, and the ultimate meaning of our fleeting existence on this planet. We all make mistakes. Some are small, a thoughtless word or a selfish act. Others are larger, causing deep pain to ourselves and to others, but they are all committed within the confines of a human lifespan, a handful of decades at most. The notion that these temporal errors, however grave, could warrant a punishment that never, ever ends is a difficult one to accept. It feels disproportionate, like being given a life sentence for a parking violation. This sense of imbalance is at the heart of the problem of hell. It challenges our deepest intuitions about what is right and what is just in the grand scheme of the universe. This isn't just an abstract theological debate. It has real-world implications for how we view God and ourselves. If the ultimate reality is governed by a system where a brief period of wrongdoing results in everlasting torment, what does that say about the governor? It can paint a picture of a deity who is more of a cosmic tyrant than a loving parent. For many, this image is impossible to reconcile with the idea of a benevolent creator. They find themselves asking if such a system could truly be called good or just by any meaningful definition of those words. The questions echo through the halls of faith. The dilemma only deepens when we consider the vast spectrum of human experience. We are not all born with the same opportunities, the same understanding, or the same capacity for good. A person born into a life of privilege and education has a different set of challenges than someone born into poverty and violence. To apply a single, unyielding standard of eternal judgment to every soul, regardless of their journey, seems to overlook the complex tapestry of life itself. It raises the question of whether a just system would account for these profound differences or simply deliver a verdict based on a final, absolute tally of sins. In our own world, we have spent centuries building systems of justice. While they are far from perfect, they are often guided by a core principle: proportionality. The punishment should fit the crime. We believe that a petty thief should not face the same consequences as a murderer. Our laws and our courts strive, however imperfectly, to create a balance between the harm done and the penalty imposed. This principle is fundamental to our understanding of what it means to be fair. It reflects a deep-seated human belief that justice is not just about punishment, but also about reason and measure. This human-centric view of justice is also built on the idea of rehabilitation. The goal is not simply to inflict suffering, but to correct behavior and, ideally, to restore the offender to society as a productive member. We create prisons with educational programs and counseling services because we hold on to the hope that people can change. An eternal punishment, by its very definition, offers no possibility of rehabilitation. It is a final, irreversible state. This stands in stark contrast to our earthly ideals, where we believe in second chances and the potential for redemption, no matter how far someone has fallen. When we turn from human courts to the divine court, the rules seem to change dramatically. The traditional Christian teaching on hell introduces a different kind of scale. Here, the severity of the punishment is not measured against the finite act of the sinner. Instead, it is measured against the infinite nature of the one who was sinned against, God. The argument is that any sin, no matter how small it may seem to us, is an offense of infinite magnitude because it is an act of rebellion against an eternal, infinitely holy God. Therefore, only an infinite punishment can satisfy the demands of infinite justice. This theological framework creates a profound chasm between our earthly sense of fairness and the concept of divine judgment. Our systems are built on nuance, circumstance, and the hope for change. The traditional view of hell appears absolute, permanent, and based on a standard that is beyond human comprehension. It asks us to accept that a lifetime of choices, made with limited knowledge and under immense pressure, can be justly met with a punishment that has no end. This is where many people stumble, finding it difficult to reconcile the God of love with the architect of an eternal prison. The traditional defense of eternal hell hinges entirely on this idea of an infinite offense. It argues that we, as finite beings, cannot possibly grasp the true gravity of sinning against a being of infinite majesty and goodness. In this view, God's holiness is so absolute that any stain of sin, any act of defiance, creates a debt that is impossible for a mortal to repay. The punishment, therefore, is not about the duration of the sinful act, but about the status of the one who was offended. The logic is stark, finite human, infinite God, therefore infinite punishment. This is how justice, in this framework, is preserved. However, critics of this view raise a critical counter-argument. They question whether a finite being is even capable of committing an infinite sin. Can an action limited by time, space, and a mortal's limited understanding truly carry infinite weight? It's like asking if a single drop of ink can stain an entire ocean. To many, it seems that the nature of the sinner must also be part of the equation. They argue that a truly just system would judge us based on our own finite capacity, not on God's infinite one. The punishment, they contend, should fit the perpetrator, not just the victim. This leads to a deeper examination of the nature of punishment itself. If the purpose of punishment is purely retributive, an eye for an eye, then perhaps the logic holds. But if justice is meant to be restorative, to heal and to set things right, then eternal non-rehabilitative suffering seems to fail the test. It accomplishes nothing beyond the perpetual infliction of pain. It doesn't restore the sinner or heal the cosmos. It simply isolates a part of creation in unending misery. Critics ask, what good is a justice that only punishes but never redeems? What purpose does it serve in a universe created by a loving God? Ultimately, this debate forces us to confront different aspects of God's character. Is God primarily a figure of absolute justice, whose holiness must be satisfied at any cost? Or is God primarily a figure of infinite love and mercy, whose ultimate desire is the reconciliation of all things? The traditional view of hell champions God's uncompromising justice. It insists that for goodness to be meaningful, evil must be decisively and eternally punished. Anything less, it is argued, would diminish God's holiness and make a mockery of justice, turning the moral fabric of the universe into a suggestion rather than a law. Another powerful argument in defense of hell centers on the concept of human free will. In this line of thinking, hell is not a place God sends people to against their will. Rather, it is the ultimate, logical consequence of a person's free choice to reject God. The argument goes that God, in His love, gives us the freedom to choose our own destiny. He desires a relationship with us, but it must be a freely chosen one. If we consistently and finally choose to reject His love, His grace, and His presence, then He honors that choice. Hell, then, is the state of being eternally separated from God, the one thing the person chose all along. This perspective reframes hell not as an active punishment inflicted by God, but as a self-imposed exile. It is, the tragic fulfillment of a life spent saying no to the source of all goodness, light, and love. Proponents of this view would say that a loving God cannot force someone to love Him back. To do so would violate the very freedom that makes love meaningful. Therefore, the existence of hell is a testament to the profound respect God has for human autonomy. It is the terrible, dark side of the glorious gift of free will, a possibility that must exist if our choices are to have any real weight. Yet this argument is not without its own set of challenges. The idea of a free choice becomes incredibly complicated when we look at the reality of human life. Are our choices ever truly free from influence? We are shaped by our genetics, our upbringing, our culture, the traumas we endure, and the opportunities we are denied. A person who grows up in a loving, stable home, with a clear understanding of faith, makes their choices under very different circumstances than someone who grows up surrounded by abuse, neglect, and indoctrinated into a different belief system. Can we say their final choice carries the same moral weight? This is where the free will defense begins to feel, fragile for some. If our ability to choose God is so heavily influenced by factors beyond our control, how can a single, final choice justify an eternity of consequences? It seems to place an immense, almost impossible burden on our flawed and fragile human will. The playing field is not level. Some people run their race on a smooth, well-lit track, while others must navigate a minefield in the dark. To judge them both by the same finish line seems to overlook the profound injustice of their starting positions, questioning the very fairness of the race itself. In the face of these difficult questions, different Christian traditions have developed varying views on the nature of final judgment. The first, and most well-known, is the traditional view of eternal conscious torment. This is the belief that those who reject God will suffer unending, conscious punishment. This view seeks to protect God's absolute justice and holiness. It holds that sin is an infinite offense that God, in his righteousness, cannot simply overlook. For justice to be true justice, it must be perfect and final. In this model, the eternal suffering of the damned serves as an everlasting testament to the gravity of sin and the sanctity of God's law. A second perspective is known as Annihilationism, or, conditional immortality. This view proposes that the ultimate fate of the unsaved is not eternal suffering, but complete destruction. After a period of punishment that is proportional to the sins committed in life, the soul simply ceases to exist. Proponents of this view believe it better protects God's character from the charge of infinite cruelty. It maintains that God is just, sin is punished, but it avoids the problem of endless, purposeless torment. It aligns with biblical passages that describe the final fate of the wicked as destruction or perishing, interpreting them literally as an end to being. A third view is universal reconciliation or universalism. This is the belief that, in the end, God's love and mercy will triumph over all sin and rebellion, and every soul will eventually be reconciled to him. This doesn't necessarily mean there is no hell or punishment, but it sees hell as a temporary remedial process, a refiner's fire that purifies the soul until it is ready to freely choose God. This view prioritizes God's infinite love and his stated desire for all to be saved. It argues that if God is all-powerful and all-loving, he will ultimately succeed in his plan to redeem his entire creation. Each of these views attempts to solve the puzzle of hell by emphasizing a different aspect of God's nature. Eternal torment champions his justice. Annihilationism balances justice with a sense of proportionality. Universal reconciliation elevates his sovereign love above all else. They all leave us standing before the same profound mystery. What would a truly loving form of justice look like? In a world crafted by a being of infinite love, what would the ultimate destiny of every soul be? The questions are not easy, and the answers we choose shape not only our vision of God, but also how we live our lives here on earth.